Thank you for watching Conscious Consumer Network. The live stream broadcast is free to view. You can pause and rewind live broadcasts to catch up, or view shows at a later date by accessing our free archives of all shows. Check out our broadcast guide to see what's on. You can show your support by donating to our network support fund. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, or subscribe to the monthly newsletter for updates. We thank you for supporting free and independent media.
And welcome to tonight's episode of Reclaiming Perception. Delighted to have as my guest tonight Jimmy Harris. Welcome, Jimmy.
Hello, Joe.
I'm so interested in what you're doing. One, as a holistic healer, but also I'm very interested in our senses and our perception of this reality, hence the name of this show, Reclaiming Perception.
Yeah.
So I'm going to pretty much do what I do with my guests, let you go off and tell us about yourself, and I'll ask questions as we go along. So give us an introduction about who you are, how you got to do what you're doing right now, and then what your new business venture is going to be.
Awesome. Be my pleasure. So yeah, thanks for having me on, Joe, and my pleasure to come and speak to you about this flotation and discovery centre that we're setting up. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I grew up in the valleys in South Wales, quite a normal life by most standards. Excuse me. We weren't the richest in town, but we weren't the poorest in town either. My parents divorced when I was 9. Usual story. I can't say that my life was any different to anyone else's really in any particular way. I was never into like the normal stuff, like the other kids, and sports and football and all that kind of stuff. And eventually I ended up getting into drugs. And like most people who kind of know me as a younger man would be kind of forgiven, I guess, if they referred to me as kind of Jimmy, the nice guy, but a bit of a druggie, because it's kind of fair to say I was quite heavily involved in, taking and selling of drugs in my younger days. Mm-hmm. But, if you'd think selling drugs, that money was my incentive, you'd be completely wrong, because I could have made far more money peddling kind of heroin and crack to desperate addicts. But it wasn't about the money for me. My thrill was always from the social element and the partying. I just loved to party, and I love to feel good. I love making other people feel good. And that was pretty much my life, cannabis, ecstasy, cocaine, and partying. And it wasn't until I went to prison and spent 9 months in a residential rehab, and I had about 70 hours of one-to-one counselling, that I kind of realised and found out that it was altering consciousness and helping others to alter their consciousness and sharing those experiences together. That was what my buzz was. That was how I used to get my enjoyment. And unfortunately now I can't take or sell drugs anymore, so I've had to find an alternative way to indulge in my passion. And as such, I came up with this idea for Float Without a Boat. So yeah, when I went to prison, I kind of got into research, and I kind of read The Curse of Ignorance by Arthur Findlay and kind of David Icke and loads of other stuff. And I've always been, like, Graham Hancock was another one, and I've always been kind of interested in following people who are on the cutting edges of their practices. So I don't have the discipline to commit myself fully to any one practice. I never have, which is why I'm a bit of a syncretist. I'm not a specialist in anything by any means, but I like to know a little bit about everything, which is why I never leave any stone unturned, and I kind of know a little bit about most stuff. And it's this syncretist approach to life that's enabled me to pull a whole load of threads together and come up with this new business idea and model, which is Float Without a Boat. It's the UK's first 24-hour flotation and discovery centre. And for those of you who don't know what flotation therapy is, the float tank / pool, they're also called isolation tanks or sensory deprivation tanks. They're essentially the perfect bathtub, so they call them. They vary in size, but the typical tank is usually about 8 foot long, 4.5 foot wide, and air is allowed to freely flow in and out of the tank, and the door never locks or latches. It holds about 10 inches of water, which is saturated with around about 850 pounds of Epsom salts. What this does is it creates a solution which is more buoyant than the Dead Sea. And you float on your back, you're about halfway in and halfway out of the water, and the water itself is kept at about the average skin temperature, which is about 37 degrees, which allows you to lose track of your body. The tank is soundproof, and when you turn the light off, completely dark. So there's no gravity, no touch, no sight, no sound, just pure nothing, unless you go interactive, but that's another story. We'll come back to that later. Now, floating as a therapy, it kind of gives the user the opportunity to let go of hidden trauma that they didn't even know they were holding on to, as well as being known to assist with things like, emotional, psychological blockages, anxiety, fears and phobias, post-traumatic stress disorder. There are all sorts, things like cravings, emotional, eating, insomnia, performance, installing new beliefs. So essentially, my intended market as a whole, it breaks down nicely into 3 categories, which is basically mind, body and spirit, or mind, health and science, if that's your persuasion. I personally don't make a major distinction between science and spirituality. I used to, but I don't anymore.
Yeah, I'm the same.
And oh, excuse me, sorry. So with the 3 different elements of, bear with us, my screen gone off. Sorry. With the 3 different elements of the floating, you've got, so your general well-being, kind of promotes total calm, peaceful relaxation. It's really good for eliminating fatigue and jet lag, really good for improving sleep, can alleviate stress, which is obviously a major factor for a lot of people. And it's really good at energizing, rejuvenating, revitalizing. It's good for increasing motivation, diminishes depression, anxiety and fear, can facilitate freedom from habits, phobias and addictions, which, I know I certainly suffer from my own bad habits and phobias and addictions. Mental benefits when it comes to that kind of element of it. We're talking about things like we're just stimulating the left and right brain synchronization.
Mm-hmm.
We can shift brainwaves from theta to the lower frequencies, alpha, theta, and even delta, which I'll come back to later, but that can really accelerate kind of healing and development. Then we're talking about things like creating mental clarity and alertness, increasing creativity for people who are into, arts and crafts, and, it heightens visualization. So if you've got things like sports people, golf players, tennis players, that kind of thing. On another level then we've got like it deepens meditation. So perhaps for those who already have a practice, they can take that to the next level, or maybe those who kind of struggle with the basics, I know I certainly do. That can be another kind of an accelerator, a little kind of tool to kickstart you into your meditation practice. And so what we've got in the physical benefits of flotation, we've got things like decreases the production of cortisol, for example, and lactic acid and adrenaline. These kind of increase the production of endorphins in the body, can speed up rehabilitation and recovery, reduces blood pressure, improves athletic performance, and can help prevent sports injuries and speed up the healing process. So yes, we've got kind of the whole market there. There aren't many people who can benefit from floating in one way or another. So what we are looking to do at the moment is we've put the foundations together for the business. So we have the float center, which is float without a boat. And if you bear with me, Joe, you caught me a little bit off guard, so I've got a few notes here, but bear with me a second here. So yeah, so we've got float without a boat, which is your kind of float center where we'd like to have double float tanks, open and closed ones. And what that will enable us to do then is offer 24-hour floating 7 days a week. Now, the float industry it was kind of taken off quite massively in the early 2000s, and then the crash came in 2008, and the market kind of went a bit sour. But since then, it's kind of been picking back up a bit now, and in the last 2 years, it's really been taken off. So what we've seen is about 200 in the last year or so opening up in America, and there's about 250 planned for the next 2 years opening worldwide. So we're kind of coming in at the right time now with regards to the flotation market. But what we want to do as well is, whereas you've got flotation, which gives all the benefits I described just now, what we're looking to do is incorporate a load of healing, therapeutic modules, I should say, with the ability then to house resident therapists from all the different modalities, such as, hypnotherapists like yourself, Reikis, all the different types. And there's so many different things that can be accelerated and accentuated by floating and vice versa. So yes, at the moment, we've got quite a lot of general interest in the local area from people who want to get involved. And we presented it to a business investor connector who was very excited and said that they were quite easy to get financial investment. But we decided we'd like to go down the crowdfunding route because of the nature of the COMS element of the business. So COMS is COMBS, Community Mutual Benefit Society. And the idea behind the COMS element of the business is a floating at the moment, you can expect to pay around £50 an hour for a float, which, is quite expensive. I certainly wouldn't be able to afford to pay £50 an hour for a regular float. But for those people who can't afford to float, we are looking to utilize the the profitable element of our business to then subsidize pro bono float tanks and then take referrals from like your GPs, local fibromyalgia groups, that kind of thing. And that will enable us then like floating for pregnant mothers, things like that, because there are a lot of people who could benefit from floating massively. We just don't have the access at the moment, and that is basically what we want to do. We want to make floating a far more accessible activity in the UK for everyone.
So that fits with exactly the kind of business that I'd like to run. So, you know, a social enterprise that effectively allows those who can afford to pay,
yes,
and those who can't to pay what they can afford, whether it's in time or exchange or whatever money they can afford. So it's about offering these healing modalities, whatever they are, to people who need it the most, because typically your people from your deprived communities are the ones who have got more healing to undergo.
Exactly, yeah, and it's funny you should say that, because when we're looking, what we'd like to do is kind of set Swindon as the flagship centre, and something I only found out myself recently, that Wiltshire's actually on the heart chakra of the planet. So I thought, what a nice kind of ethos to kind of get your flagship centre set up on the heart chakra of the planet and then allow it to branch out from there. As you said, with this philosophy, which a lot of people are on board with, the inequality, the gap with inequality has never been higher, as we know, and what's the word I'm looking for? Forgive me. When people are poor, sorry, my mind's gone blank. Deprived areas. When we have deprived areas, deprivation in this country is just obscene. We're seeing people sleeping on the streets in Swindon. It's just disgraceful. It really is. And when we've got people out there driving around in £1 million cars, and there are a lot of people out there who don't want the divide, and they do have the money, and they're willing to share around. And as you say, if it's worked on a contribution basis, those who can see the value of the project and the value of it that it brings to everyone else, they're more than happy to contribute.
Absolutely. So if we can take it back to the basics, so people who haven't actually, some people have heard of deprivation tanks, some haven't.
Yes.
So I'm aware that it's got all these potential things that you've listed.
Yeah.
So a couple of questions. One, what would it look like? So if I came along as a client and I've got a £50 session, whether I've done an exchange or paid the finances to enter into a tank, how long would I get in the tank, and what would it look and feel like to me personally?
Well, generally, some of the tanks are coming out now. They are modular design, and they're single tanks. So they're kind of like some of them have like a clamshell lid, or some of them are quite square. But what we're looking to do is use float cabins or float rooms. Now, what that does is you're not climbing into because some of them can be quite daunting. It looks like you're climbing into a coffin, with some of them. But with the float rooms, they're a lot more accessible, especially when we're considering we'll be hoping to cater for people with perhaps disabilities, etc. And with the float rooms, they're a lot easier to climb into, and they're obviously a lot more open because they're a lot airier as well, so you can keep the lights on. You have intercom systems too, which allows you then to kind of, if you were doing hypnotism or if you're incorporating some kind of psychotherapy, you can incorporate that through remotely as well. So yeah, essentially you kind of come in, you shower, prepare yourself, and then you put in a pair of earplugs, and set yourself into the water. And as I described, the water's super saturated, so it's buoyant. And essentially, generally, people float for around an hour. Now, what people have started doing is finding the benefits of extended floating. Now, extended floating, as you can imagine, especially for things like pain relief, the longer you're in there, the more relief you get, obviously, with pregnancy and fibromyalgia, MS, and all these other kind of conditions, as well as people recovering from accidents and all that other stuff. And whilst extended floating can be supremely beneficial, the thought of lying in an empty tank or a bathtub for hours and hours and hours is not particularly appealing for a lot of people, which is where we came up with the idea of interactive floating, which there are a few different levels of it, which comes down to your basic kind of just a screen in the tank. So if you can imagine, with regards to the Coombs element, where we'll be looking for the donation basis kind of system, where if you imagine we could be looking for taking referrals from care homes or places like that, and if we were taking groups, and it would be nice if you imagine you can have couples and, Doris and Dillis in the tank, watching Countdown of an afternoon and doing their thing. What we want to do is cater for everyone, essentially. It's not going to be for everyone, but rather than having just your one single soul dark tank, we want to open it up we want to incorporate the rooms, make it a lot more appealing, and as I said, incorporate a lot more of the interactive elements as well. So as I know you're friendly with Skylar Archimedes, and I was chatting with Todd about his Pandora Star, which is, I thought about that 10 years ago, you know, and I thought incorporating the two together. And again, it comes back to like the indulgence of altering consciousness. You know, these lights, if there's some reviews on YouTube, for example, and you see people like Dennis McKenna, and when he's just finished using the light and he's saying about the coloured LEDs. Now, essentially, if the people aren't aware of the Pandora Star and similar technologies, what they are is LED lights that flash in a certain sequence, and essentially it's brain entrainment technology. What they do is the light actually stimulates the pineal gland to release endogenous DMT. So whereas maybe in times gone by I might have indulged in a DMT pipe or what, you know, these days we can utilize modern technology and do exactly the same thing, which is just, you know, it's just brilliant, really.
I was lucky enough to go on a retreat with Sky and Todd in October this year, and they brought Pandora Star along. Awesome. So we could go on it as part of the manifestation retreat, and it was great. And I could just imagine it in a sensory deprivation tank with those lights flashing, with floating, with nothing else except that. It would be amazing.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm looking forward to trying out. And as I said, it's all about exploration then as well, the kind of consciousness and energy, because let's have a look. I wrote a few things down. So like I said, when we're coming into the kind of talking about the brain entrainment technology kind of stuff, I'd highly recommend people check out Bruce Lipton and Tom Campbell's recent collaborative effort on YouTube called Unveiling the Matrix. And here we have two absolute top players in their respective fields of biology and physics. We've never met before, but yet find that they work in these two supposedly, you know, dichotomous fields are coming to exactly the same conclusions about the nature of our reality.
I love that conversation. It was great.
Yeah, it's really good, isn't it? And, you know, they come to the same conclusions about, you know, the nature of our reality, but also the way in which this, you know, biological meat suit of ours interacts with the environment around it. And what they've concluded is that consciousness is the very deepest root of physics, and that's where this all got started. So, you know, they say we can think of consciousness as the supercomputer, the big picture. And, excuse me, it's exploring this consciousness together that's going to heal us individually and collectively. And I loved how they said at the end, you know, about 1 trillion amoebas working in harmony is what comprises the human body, and, you know, what could 1 trillion human beings working in harmony turn into? And I have no idea.
Yeah, it's a community, isn't it? And again, I was lucky enough to hear Bruce Lipton speak at a consciousness conference in August this year, and he said that the body is a community of cells.
Yes.
We are not this one unit. This unit is a community, and it's like, exactly, it's about them working together. And when they work in disharmony, that's when dis-ease enters the body. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And it's like, you know, my business partner, Colin, he's brought some phenomenal ideas to the party, which make this a real game changer. And, you know, when we come in, you know, we talk about money and business, we are still firmly in the monetary system. And however, what we want to move away from, and our vision is to completely utilize the monetary system whilst it's there, but for the right reasons and for the benefit of the people who need it.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Oh, I had a point to make there and I've completely gone off piece, but not to worry. So yeah, going back, that's what it was. Yeah, so with Tom Campbell, what they say is no cell within the body can be in abundance until every other cell is in homeostasis. And that's what we need to work back towards now, isn't it? You know, let's bring down this divide now. Let's start redistributing these billions and trillions, because really we don't need money. Money is just a tool. Once we get our systems in place through kind of your ideas and our ideas with the Coombs and all the rest of it, money can just disappear. But it's this transitional kind of way that we're going to need to do it, you know, with like-minded people like ourselves and bringing everyone together. It's something we can easily do.
100% agree with you. And for me as well, one of the things I'm really interested in is, you know, you talked about some of the potential things like people with anxiety, traumas. So I use certain modalities like EFT, matrix reimprinting is my chosen methodology. Also another one called swaying, which I learned off a psychotherapist, lady called Sandra Fecht in Canada. And they're very effective for deep-rooted trauma. And if there's something like a sensory deprivation tank that can support that kind of healing, have you got any sort of scientific or psychological evaluations of or feedback from people of why it works? What
Funny you ask, Joe. Funny you ask. I have notes everywhere. Let me have a little look and see what I've got. You know, funny, I took a little while earlier to make some notes from Joe Dispenza.
Yeah, one of my favourites.
Oh,
Absolutely.
absolutely phenomenal stuff. And
Yeah.
it was only introduced to me recently by a friend of mine, Cherry, and I was watching some of his videos. Now, you did an interview a few weeks ago or a couple of months ago now, really, with Corey Kente.
Yes, did, yeah.
Yes, I met Corey a few months back, and since agreeing to kind of embark on a shamanic apprenticeship with her, which is something I've kind of researched heavily and wanted to do for years, I've been researching a lot of what's being referred to as neo-shamanism. And the likes of Michael Denny, the Thunder Wizard, Mr. and Mrs. Geo from Beyond the Veil, Frank Castle, my dear friend Mark Slee, and apparently it's all about hashtag be your own shaman. Now, kind of with all this talk of sovereignty and the rest of it, I think we need to get everyone to realize that nobody needs anybody else to heal them. We might need people to remind us of how to do it and, show us the way, but essentially it's within us all to heal ourselves. And the best
Agree with you.
The best part is we don't even need medicine, Yeah. And so Joe Dispenza talks about intention, which basically boils down to being clear about what we want. And when we start asking the questions, the frontal lobe has connections to all parts of the brain. And the moment you ask an open-ended question, you speculate a possibility and the creative center kind of turns on and looks out across the landscape of the brain, as they say, and pulls together networks of neurons which come together to form a new picture or vision, which is what intention is. Now, coincidentally in the video, he mentions visualizing the retreat you want to set up in your mind, which I thought, there's no coincidence there. Anyway, so I'm visualizing this center in my mind, all the tanks, the pools, the therapeutic modules, the aromatherapy oxygen bar, the viewing room, the podcast central suite, the staff, the animals, the whole vision. And these additional elements, they give the vision depth and body, and it kind of turns this vision into a motion picture. Now, you're in that imaginary place. And what happens when this vision takes on enough life of its own is that you're actually living and experience this vision in your mind. And your brain doesn't know the difference between the actual event that takes place in your life and what you're imagining in your mind. You're actually rewiring yourself to the future. And from the perspective now, the brain is no longer a record of the past. It's a map for the future. So what are you saying is that most people, they stop at this level, but there's another level. And to take the intention to the next level and give it the life, we have to combine it with emotion. The reason why is because the body is the unconscious mind, and it doesn't know the difference between an experience in your life that created an emotion and an emotion that's created by an experience in your mind. Now, the body, as the unconscious mind, is living in that future, in the present moment, and we're beginning to change ourselves epigenetically in preparation for that event. Which is a bit of a mouthful, but once you get into it, it does all start to make sense. And he does explain it really well. The condition to it, though, is that you can't wait for your healing to feel wholeness. You have to feel wholeness for your healing to occur.
It's as if it's real already.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like you can't wait for your new relationship to feel loved. You have to feel loved so your new relationship finds you. You can't wait for your new job to feel empowered. You have to feel empowered by the thought of your new job, and so your new job finds you. So what we're doing here is essentially flipping the model on its head, because most people wait for something outside of themselves to change how they feel inside. And when they feel better inside, then they feel relief and say, "Oh, thank you, you made me feel better." But this is cause and effect. That's the old model of reality. And in the quantum model, we're talking about causing an effect, which means you're going to have to change how you think and how you feel before the experience occurs in order for the event to find you, which is flipping everything on its head, but if it works, right? So
it does work. I've done it. It works.
Yeah, loads of people are doing it. I'm really blown away by it all. And it says if your personality creates your personal reality, and your personality is made up of how you think and how you act and how you feel, then the present personality is listening to this show has created the present current reality called their life. So if they wanted to create a new personal reality in life, they would have to start thinking about what they were thinking about changing, starting to become conscious of their own conscious habits and behaviors and modify them. And here's the key. They have to look at the emotions that they've memorized that keep them anchored to the past and decide then if those emotions belong in the future. So most people try and create a new personal reality as the same personality, but that doesn't work. So in other words, you can't make like a wealthy person feel lack. It can't happen. You can't take lack into the future, Like a sick person doesn't feel desperation, they feel wholeness. So kind of
do you know Joe Dispenza's story?
I don't know.
Right, I've been on his progressive workshop.
Yeah.
It was amazing. And I've seen him twice at a consciousness conference and on a workshop
awesome.
with Greg Braden and a workshop with Bruce Lipton this year as well. And
fantastic.
just love his stuff. Absolutely resonates with me. So I'm going to tell you his story just so it gives a bit of context of why he did
brilliant.
it. So before he was a neuroscientist, he was actually a chiropractor.
Okay.
He was a naturopath, only he did natural medicines, and he was doing a triathlon, and he got, I might have bits of the story wrong, but it's the principle of it. Yeah. He got hit on his push bike by an old lady in a pickup truck who dragged him 3 miles down the road.
Oh, nice.
When he got to hospital, 6 of his vertebrae had collapsed, and he was told to have this operation where they were required to take part of his hip, put some metal rods in his spine, take his whole spine out, put it back in. And something inside him, he said, didn't feel right. He didn't want to do it. And these 4 different experts came in, told him how if he didn't have it done within the next 48 hours, his spine would fuse together and he would be in a wheelchair the rest of his life. And he chose not to do it, even though his family were concerned and all his loved ones were saying, you should do this, his father, etc. He went home. He said every time he caught an image of a wheelchair, he would dismiss it. He would imagine himself running and walking and healthy. He would imagine people telling him that he looked great and that he looked healthy. And he said people were trying to get him to sell his practice. He told them no. To sell his house, he told them no, because he would be giving in to other people's beliefs. And he said for the first 6 weeks, he literally took his attention through meditation and focused on that vertebra. And he said it was really hard. It was like a dark night of the soul for him. It was really difficult. And he said then at one point, he just kept making himself start again when he'd get off track and back onto it. And then he started to notice his body started to feel better. And he knew that it was working. So then he really put it in with even more discipline. And I think I might have the weeks wrong, but it was about 10 weeks' time he was walking again. And they called him a medical miracle. So he knew something profound had happened. So he decided that it was his thoughts and his feelings and emotions that had created the healing in his own physical being. So he went back to university to study neuroscience. And he said that he went into that field to teach people how to heal themselves, but it's led into this whole arena of creating your own personal reality, not just for your own physical health, but every single thing you experience, including connection with interdimensional beings and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, and this is all new to me, all this Joe Dispenza stuff, like the idea for, I think it was Fringe and Joe Rogan primarily, but Fringe as well was my introduction to float tanks. And, the idea has been brewing since then. And it was primarily, I just wanted a float tank like Joe, in my basement. Yeah. And then, it's not just for me, for everyone else as well, kind of thing. And then, the whole business element of it was a fantastic idea. But then all these recent, there's a few, the whole syncretist kind of element, that's what I said about bringing the different threads together. So you've got Joe Dispenza, for example. Now, this was only about 2 months ago, and this stuff that we're talking about right now is just absolutely fundamental. They just go together
It does. And
it's unbelievable.
The thing I want to say and link it back to the flotation tank is what Joe Dispenza teaches on the progressive and advanced workshop is teaches people how to meditate in a way where you go to that place where you're no thing. There's no time. There's no space.
Yeah. So he's so I'll show you because I've kind of read a few notes. He's saying about so then by re-identifying with the future, and then So then, by re-identifying with the future, and instead of your past, present reality is a very easy conversation to have, but actually doing it requires a tremendous amount of awareness. Right, that's not making any sense. I will just read it out. So what he's saying is, whilst it's easy to say in practice, to do it in practice takes a lot of awareness. And as you say, where those thoughts are coming in where he's thinking about people giving him the compliments and he's thinking of himself.
It's difficult.
You have to be aware constantly 24 hours a day. And, that is the key. But when we have more people aware and more people are doing it and we're all consciously aware and all doing it together and working towards these practices, it'll be a lot easier. And he said, by bringing the awareness, and all this information, as I said, is all new to me, and I'm sure it'll be new to a lot of other people. When people actually start putting the puzzle pieces together as well and seeing how this all fits together and the benefits that can be gleaned from it,
Yeah.
So Joe was talking, phenomenal. Go on.
So Joe Dispenza's meditations they take you to the place into space. So so for example, I'll just give you an example as a hypnotherapist. I love the way he's designed the hypnosis or the meditation. So he said he puts your attention to the lips, and he says put your full attention to your lips now, and become fully aware of the space occupied by your lips in space. So he's basically psychologically getting you to just focus on the space, and it's the space that you're in the deprivation tank. So I can absolutely see the lack of senses in the tank will get you to that place that Joe Dispenza's taking you to through his hypnotic statement far quicker. So I would love to maybe design something with you on manifestation using hypnotic language in the sensory deprivation tank.
See, this is what I'm talking about, yeah.
I would love to do it because it's something I'm quite passionate about, and I love Joe Dispenza's stuff. So I think this is something, we could have some absolute, objective to work on.
I really, really do like the sound of that. It's really good. He was saying about, like, the way to kind of get into it is kind of make a deal with yourself that you aren't going to get up from your meditation until you feel different.
Yeah, don't get up the same person who sat down.
Yes, you sit down, you don't get up until you feel different. And when you do, you get up, you go out and you maintain that modified state of body and mind all day, independent of in-person thing, experience.
Yeah. Have you read his book?
No, I haven't. Like I said, I've only been recently introduced to him. So
I'll send it to you.
Oh, thank you very much.
Breaking the habit of being yourself. And the first two parts are explaining what happens in the physical body. Part 3 teaches you how to meditate. So if you read that book, it's going to absolutely complement what you're doing with Float Without a Boat.
Well, yeah, because that's what he's saying. And when you kind of get into it, and the kind of the synchronicities and the serendipities and coincidences begin to happen, and
unbelievable, yeah.
Unexpected events show up, to remind us that the divine is present, and it's an indicator that we are kind of now in the dance with this world, and with free will consciousness and the consciousness that controls everything. Dancing together and making something of it. And he says, like, when you're doing that and when that everyday consciousness merges with creator consciousness, why not just say, hey, creator, look at me. I'm a son of God, and I've took up the time of my day to emulate you and show you that I'm you. I'm a worthy player, and I'm ready to play the game. And, let's have some fun. And this is, it's what we're hungry to get into. Yeah.
It is. And I like the way he asks how, to ask the divine to show me a sign, an unbelievable sign.
What he said is, he says in the context, he says, here's the deal. I need a sign from you to show me that you're real, but it can't be obvious, or that would just defeat the object and it wouldn't be anything new. He says, so rock my world, drop me a little breadcrumb from the table and let me know your presence so I can be inspired, and drop you a little wink and go on creating. Yeah. So honestly,
some of the stuff, did you hear about the balls that I found?
No.
Okay. I talked about it a few weeks ago on my show. I know I was thinking of doing some ayahuasca with shamans, and it never came to fruition. And I was a bit like, do I do it? Don't I do it? So I like to go down to the forest and hug trees. Right. And I asked the trees, what should I do? And I was asking this question, and I was in this like dilemma, do I don't? And I turned around, and on the floor next to me at the tree I've been hugging was a ball. I'll see if I can find it for the second half, with a butterfly in it and a flashing light inside it and a piece of tinsel. It was a clear ball with this butterfly in it. I felt like it was profound and it meant something, but the logical brain can dismiss it a bit. Oh, it's coincidence. Yeah. I went on the retreat with Todd and Sky, came back. I still felt a little bit stuck, and I went back down to the forest. I hugged a different tree. I asked the same question, like, what do I do in life? I feel stuck. I turned round and another ball with a butterfly was in it. Was next to me. Now, if that isn't a sign from the divine,
it's a coincidence, Joe. It's just a coincidence.
It's like
day now.
Two clear balls with butterflies inside them after asking the same question after hugging trees, with separate weeks apart, different places in the forest.
What you will, as they say, eh?
So the signs are there, and it's about, I'm hoping, I'm thanking the universe, and get my language right, that I will understand what they mean. I still haven't grasped what it means, but I know it's going to come to me. And that's, I'm not going to try to find it. I'm trusting that the meaning of it's coming to me.
Yes, no, I do get you, because it's like this manifestation business, and
try.
Well, yeah, it was in the summer. I was kind of really thinking loads about skydiving because I want to get into skydiving and base jumping. I'd kind of just, I think about it, now and again, but I'd been really thinking about it quite a lot. And just out of the blue, an old school friend of mine who's a qualified skydiving instructor just gives me a ring. Come on, we're going skydiving. Like,
Yeah.
what? He's like, yeah, I'm in the area.
Yeah.
Come on, we're going. I'm like, cool. It's just like, what? I just don't argue with it anymore. I just go with the flow because it just seems to work. And the more you go with it, the quicker the manifestations seem to happen, I think.
I like what Todd and Sky say. They say, thanks, universe, more please.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. That's good.
Yeah.
That's really good. Because, like, going back to Joe Dispenza, and he's saying kind of, when you start having these synchronicities and serendipities, and then, when it goes way beyond that and you kind of have a download or a mystical experience of any variety, of which kind of I've been privileged to be present with a few, paradigm shifting moments in people's lives around me, breakthrough experiences, downloads occurring, epiphany moments, all that kind of stuff, entity contact, etc. And once you've experienced those kind of paradigm shifting, moments of awakening, there's no going back. And, I know this is something you can testify to yourself, Joe. It's, once you've seen the light, there's no, it's just onwards and upwards. And, they work on, go on, sorry.
Our brains can try and trick us back in, but you can't unknow what you see.
Very, very much so. Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
They're talking about they work on brain mapping, which basically came literally as a result of witnessing, healing on the spot. So someone in a wheelchair with MS wasn't walking in a decade, just getting up and walking. What is causing these kind of effects? And he said they brought in a team of scientists and researchers from all over the world and conducted 7 events, over 2,500 brain scans, and they're now, conducting qualitative studies of those students' brains. And, they're scanning these students before the events, and then, after 5 days of students' brains, through meditation, changing beliefs and perceptions, getting them beyond themselves, then changing their energy, the whole thing, and then they scan them again because they want to know if, someone is getting healing from Parkinson's or MS or lupus, they want to know if it's just in their mind and confirm if it's in their brains as well. And that's what they're finding, it really is. And when they selected random people and scanned their brains during meditation, they were able to gather vital info on what's going on with, like, the inner workings and when they're there, when they're not. And if you're looking for things like coherence and amplitudes and how fast people can get into a certain brain state or how long they can maintain that brain state when they're there, and kind of measure and correlate them with their own experience, which gives more information then for those future transformational work. So they also measure the heart too, because the heart center and the brain centers, they're both capable of coherence. So when both centers achieve the coherence, we're at our best because we start to experience wholeness. And when we experience that, we have no want, because how could you want for anything when you're whole? It's beautiful.
Absolutely. So if we take just that principle, so this is how I explain it quite a lot when I speak to people. So the brain sends out electrical waves. The heart sends out magnetic waves. So your heart is 5,000 times more magnetic than any other organ in your body, according to Heart Math Institute. And typically what we do as human beings is we send out mixed signals. So the head's thinking one thing, the heart's feeling a different thing. So I want to be wealthy, I want a healing centre. Oh, it's not going to happen to me because I've got guilt and shame. So what's happening? We'll experience snippets of these things we want to manifest through affirmations, but because it's an incoherent wave going into the electromagnetic field, the field isn't getting a clear message. And you talked about set your intention, be very clear about what you do want. And I think the most difficult thing for all of us to do is to decide, I want that. I'm going to feel like I've got that already, and then I'm going to send this electromagnetic coherent wave from my being into this electromagnetic field around us. And that is the gift of what Joe Dispenza's teaching us. And I know it, but I don't always practice it, and it is difficult to get to that place.
No, it is. And as I say, it's one thing knowing something, and it's a different ballgame practicing it. But as you say, it's the consistent, persistent effort. And as long as we keep up that consistent, persistent effort, that's when we're going to be able to see those results,
Yeah. He says, you've got to want it more than everything else. Want it more than sleep. Want it more than your family. Want it more. And the thing is, what you're setting your intention for, you make it your priority. And if you're doing it from a place of love, so if you're doing it with an aim of an improvement for the collective, so a purpose bigger than yourself, the universe puts in more energy to it and creates it even faster and bigger.
Exactly.
And this is the thing, service to others over service to self. The energetic force of love and compassion helps that manifestation.
Yeah, it definitely does. But it's just, it comes with, certainly with me anyway, it's all incremental, these things come and you learn as you go, and, I'm certainly not perfect. I've made mistakes. I've gone along the way, but, we learn as we go, and I've learned more. I thought, I thought I knew some stuff and I didn't know anything. And, even in the last year, I've learned more in the last 6 months than I have in the last 6 years. It's just crazy.
And we still only know that much of what is to be
I know,
known, isn't it?
nothing about nothing. That's what I keep reminding myself. But the fun of it is it's accelerating and it's growing. And it just, like I said, if we can get these kind of centres off the ground and these little community groups kind of cobwebbing together, and as that network kind of builds up, especially on the energetic ley lines and stuff like that, I think it'll be phenomenal.
I'm keen to help you do your centre because it fits with what I want in my centre, and the things I want to offer. And I'm not even going to say my centre. It's not mine because it isn't about me.
I don't say mine either. It's Colin, my business partner, Colin and I. It's not ours. We're a team. It's every single person because we're just connectors. I'm just connecting people together and bringing all the different energies. Obviously, it's got my energy as well. Don't get me wrong, but I'm bringing everyone else's energy to the party. And every single person, like, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And it just grows and grows. It's phenomenal. It's really, really good.
So many people want to do it as well, don't they? You speak to so many. The world is changing. You can feel it.
Everyone's ready for it. It's just exactly.
Yeah. So, going back to your centre, whereabouts is it? How do people find it?
We've not set up them. It's not set up yet. We're in the process of setting it up. So we're in the process of securing kind of funding. So we're deciding on whether to go down the kind of bank loan route or whether to crowdfund it. And I've got a meeting tomorrow with Anthony D'Souza, who is kind of he's down in Wiltshire. He's a crowdfunding expert. Mm-hmm. And I think based on the nature of it and based on the kind of whole Coombs aspect, I feel that, if people can see the vision of what we want to put together, they'll want to contribute whether they're going to be a part of it or not. And for what we're asking for what we're going to put together, I believe there's a lot of value for money. So, we're hoping to kind of put the crowdfunding campaign together initially to get the first bit off the ground and then kind of go from there, really. And look, because there's a lot of scope within Swindon Town for projects with regards to mental health, homelessness. So at this moment in time, what I'm trying to do is just raise awareness about the project, get the information out there. I've been doing loads of networking with different agencies and groups because we essentially want to connect everyone from your mother's meeting coffee morning to your dog walkers group, to your church groups, to your schools, to your colleges, to your businesses. We want a really cohesive, extensive network, set up that template model for our flagship centre, and then we can just kind of branch that out anywhere. We'll have a template in place.
Yeah. What's music to my heart, if you like, is how many people have got this, come in with this vision right now. Because I feel like it's the only thing that fits with me to put in place a blueprint for a healing centre that's going to be here long beyond me being on this plane.
Exactly.
And it's like a way of being so that people can heal emotionally, physically, spiritually, nutritionally, food growing projects, get back to nature, get back to consciousness. And, and I think like blueprints of, the centres all over the country, the world, everywhere, and like-minded souls standing together to make it easier for people to get back to wholeness.
Exactly. And when you're talking about all that kind of stuff, Mandy Parsons, who was a very key part of our team, she introduced us. We have a few different groups on in Swindon. I'll come back to that in a little bit. But she introduced me to a series of books, I believe it's called The Cedar Ringing Tales by Anastasia, which is, people should check it out. Essentially, I will post some links for people to check it out, but it basically boils down to getting back to our roots. And Anastasia, you'll have to forgive me, and I know Mandy will be terribly angry at me because I've forgotten all about it, but it's to do with essentially set in Russia, and it's her family's kind of plot of land, and they've been on there since time immemorial. things like technology is beneath them. It's how we used to live as the original humans, I believe, and the things that we can do, which is what we want to try and rediscover now. So there's a lot of things within the Ringing Cedars series that really we will be looking to kind of incorporate and bring into our centres and all our different plans. Yeah.
Oh, I'll have to have a look at that. I've not heard of those, so I'll have a
I'll
read.
post the link. It's really, really interesting stuff. Yeah.
Oh, fabulous.
Awesome.
So obviously you've got this vision, and I believe you're absolutely on the right track, looking at Joe Dispenza's stuff, talking about manifesting, believing it's real, creating it, getting the right people on board and the right support from the universe to make it a reality. And so you talked about Wiltshire. Wiltshire's obviously quite a bit away from where you are now, Swansea, isn't it?
I'm in Merthyr, Merthyr Tydfil.
That's Tidville. So your long-term or your flagship one, you see it actually being in Wiltshire?
Yes, simply because geographically, as I said, there's a gap in the market for one, so that's a natural. But then, as I said, we found out about the whole kind of the heart chakra, the energetic lines, and this is where you kind of get into the bigger picture kind of stuff, and I'm a bit of a bigger picture kind of guy. So yeah, when we kind of seen all that, it just made absolute sense. We could set it up anyway, and we've got quite a few locations ready for phase 2. Like I said, with Bath, there's one already been set up in Gloucester, and we want to set up a second. So we've got Gloucester, Bath, Bristol, Newport, Cardiff and Merthyr on our radar for phase 2. But once they're kind of set up, it's just, it can just go as quick as you want. And if people are ready for it, we're ready to distribute it. Yeah, they really are. That's the feeling I'm getting.
So I'm thinking, like, you quoted, like, working with hospitals for people with things like fibromyalgia, etc. Is there any statistical evidence that proves it improves those scenarios for people?
Yes, there's loads of different stuff. I have to forgive me, I don't have everything off the top of my head. But
it's not a test, by the way.
No,
it's just...
no, I understand. No, I understand. There is. It's surprising. So that's a lot of people's first question. Now, some people, as I said, that's their first question. Where's the science? Where's the evidence? Where's the proof? And rightly so, of course. And there is a wealth of it. And because it's quite a new industry, some of the stuff I found is kind of research that was done kind of in the 80s and in the 90s, but it's all kind of we say a bit of a renaissance now. So with our link, we have a link through our website designer and through our investor connector to doctors.net and a few other medical practitioners, and what we will be looking to do is incorporate the research element within it and kind of continue on with the research that's already been done. And they've for all sorts, so the pain, with regards to pain relief and stress relief and all that kind of good stuff, that's kind of anecdotal evidence. But with regards then to, so there's kind of Justin Feinstein is doing a lot of the research in the Brain Laureate Institute over in America. And I've reached out to Justin, I've not yet back from him yet, but he was discussing it in terms of the research that's going on is kind of small scale, but this kind of fits in perfectly then with our model, because as our healing model expands, it'll also expand the scope for the research to continue on the elements that they've already been doing it. And it does cover everything from assisting with eating disorders to depression. As I said, I've got kind of loads of different stuff all kind of ready for the website, because what we want our website to be is a real comprehensive archive and library. So you're going to break it down to your mind, body, spirit on the first page, and then depending on what your kind of prerogative is, you can go down the little rabbit hole of your choice. And then within there, then as I said, I've got a wealth of information all ready to go onto the website. And there's pretty much, as far as I can see, not a single market or person that can't benefit from it in one way or the other, even if it is just from a relaxation perspective. But it goes much further than that as well. So when you're kind of going back a little bit to Joe Dispenza's work we were talking about earlier, when they were with their scientific stuff, they were measuring like not only the heart and the brain, but they were also measuring the energy of the room to kind of illustrate not only the coherence of the fields within the individuals, but also the coherent fields of the individuals enhancing the energetic field of the room, which, you know, this is the kind of stuff that they're scientifically measuring right now. And, you know, they're also measuring people's energetic auras, the energy centers of the body, as well as the epigenetic changes, as well as the blood and brain chemistry.
Yeah.
Now, all of this information which they've discovered in the last 3 years, that's made scientific history.
It's undeniable, but you know what's quite interesting? And having been fortunate enough to go on his workshop, he actually shows the charts and graphs.
Oh, cool.
So like the brainwave frequencies, for example. So he shows people when they're going into, you know, there's the hertz running through the brain, and he says that typically the average human brain is between 10 to 60 hertz.
10 to 60, yeah.
Yeah, and it gets you to shout it back, 10 to 60. And then he shows you a chart where they're going to 100, and everyone's, wow, then 150. Then it goes to several thousand, then 30,000. Then there was somebody who was like in the millions. And the chart looked like a rainbow because they were actually that squashed together and that colourful. And the people who were in this gamma state were literally went to other dimensions and saw interdimensional beings. And,
well, that's it. I'm sorry.
And he said he went into this as a scientist. He didn't go into it to go into other dimensions, but this is exactly where it's led him.
Well, that's it. You know, it's kind of, excuse me, it was the same with Rick Strassman on his research with DMT. You know, they were trying to objectify it, and in the end he was like, oh, I'm just going to stop. It is what it is. As a scientist, you kind of have to put down your scientist hat and just accept it for what it is, you know. And what the other things they were saying with his research is, as far as the brain goes, what they've established is that when people are focused solely on like objects and people, external stimuli, they have very little effects or changes in the brain. And what we also know is that when people get into that state, when they are no one, no thing, no time, that theta state, that's the moment they literally are pure consciousness. And, you know, consciousness is what changes the brain. The brain doesn't change the brain. The program never changes the program. The ego never changes the ego. You know, matter never changes matter. It's only when a person becomes consciousness, and consciousness with that energy is what they call in the epiphenomenon of matter, which I kind of like that. Yeah. And it's when we get to that elegant, graceful state where, you know, you're disconnected from the body, that's when we can heal the body. And that's when we forget about our life. It's when we forget about our life, that's when we can change our life. Yeah. And, you know, when we forget about whatever it is that's keeping us busy, all the elements that we identify with, you know, we can get to that moment in life where we can begin to change it and heal our lives. And, you know, he actually states that they've seen it enough times to confirm that, you know, it's within all of us as human beings that that's when we're at our best, when we get beyond ourselves. So that's what I'm striving towards anyway.
Absolutely. And I mean, this tank fits so well with what he aims to achieve with the meditation. I'm definitely going to I'll send you the meditations as well in the book, and it'll just enhance what you've already done, because I can see it's like listening to Joe Dispenza after stuff, you're reiterating what he's saying, so it's really good. Well,
that's it, yeah, I took some notes because, you know, you were saying about these guys, the average is between 10 and 60 microvolts squared, and he was saying, you know, these guys are capturing 650,000, a million, 2.5 million, even 4 million, you know. What that means basically is that person's having a full-on sensory experience without their senses. Whatever is happening between their ears is more important than anything that's ever happened in their entire life. You know?
He said that some of the doctors were concerned that they were having seizures.
Well, that's what he said, yeah.
But they can't be, because when they looked at the state of the heart, it was in this state of love and bliss, and it was the head that was going off into the gamma state, but the heart was just perfect peace. Oh,
just normal, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's what you're saying, like whatever is happening in their head while they're in that state is more real than, you know, normal waking consciousness. So if they were traumatized or abused or beaten, and, you know, the intensity of that event, kind of branded them neurologically and emotionally, and they can't get beyond that. When they're having that inner experience, and it is a complete mystical experience, and the amplitudes of that kind of high, the intensity of the experience inwardly is greater than any kind of past trauma. And that's when the moment experience rewrites the circuitry in the brain, and they're rewiring themselves in 1 second and then sending a new emotional signal to the body. And that's the moment then that the gene gets regulated and the past is literally washed away out of the body.
Yeah. Well, one of Joe Dispenza's meditations, it's a water rising meditation.
Okay.
And you actually imagine yourself being immersed in water. So if you ran that meditation, which is Joe Dispenza speaking himself, because he's got a really great way of being so assertive and making you really want it. So he'll say, stay present, and he's like very assertive with it. And, you know, like, you want this. Do not get up, the same person who sat down. And I could just imagine doing that in a sensory deprivation tank. It would be amazing to do Joe Dispenza's meditation.
Well, it just takes away all the distractions, as you said. It's just sensory deprivation, and it's once all that need for excess energy of just fighting gravity and all the rest of it is just it's there for your disposal. It all goes to the brain, and then we have just massive processing power. So yeah it's all exciting to come together.
There are other techniques that he uses on the progressive workshop as well. He talks about the fluid that runs up the spine. Have you looked at that yet?
Yes, I've seen bits about it. The cerebrospinal fluid and the 33.
So basically what it does is it gets you to, when you take a deep breath, you imagine you're sucking the fluid from the base of your spine all the way up, and you squeeze all your muscles all the way up your spine. You suck it up all the way past your throat into the top of your head, and then you hold the energy. You imagine the energy being sucked up your spine into the top of the head, and apparently it takes 24 hours for that fluid to travel around your spine. But when you're actually sucking it right up, you're actually sucking the brain out of the body, as he puts it.
Oh, interesting.
It enhances the state of meditation. So when you actually suck the fluid through the spine, squeeze all the muscles all the way up, hold the energy at the top of your head, then you go into the meditative state after that. It enhances it significantly. It's like the fluid goes straight to the pineal gland and the crown.
Oh, that's fascinating. We were talking about that visualizing. I've got aphantasia, which is I don't have any mental visual abilities, then, if you want to put it like that, of distinct lack of, very shallow. I didn't kind of realize until recently, because there's a lot of with this consciousness work and energy fields and all the rest. It's all about visualization, and because I have aphantasia, I can't visualize. So it's again something I've only recently discovered, and something I kind of want to look into with other people and kind of find out how do you get over that. They talk about being blind in the third eye. It's one description of it, which is, again, it's all just new stuff I'm discovering. But yeah, this visualization, I'm hoping that flotation will enable me to kind of work on my visualization techniques, because that's something I've always lacked in.
And sometimes I think like the guided meditations like Joe Dispenza's can help you get to that place, because if we try to do something, the opposite happens.
Well, that's it.
So if you're trying to visualize, so like a hypnotic term I'll use, if I say to somebody, see this, imagine you can see this, and they say I can, we use the term pretend you can see it. Yeah. So we tell the person to pretend they can see it, because they're trying too hard otherwise, and it's like get rid of the energy of trying.
Yeah, I get that, because when Joe was talking about the really high amplitude cases, they were saying there's about 25 to 30 cases where they saw the amplitudes were extremely high.
Yeah.
And he was saying kind of like, think about this, what would happen right now if kind of you and I had our senses increased by 25%, and we could see, feel and hear and smell 25% better than before. You'd have to say that if your senses were heightened to that degree, so would your awareness. And so when a person is having that kind of full-on sensory experience without their senses, what's really happening is that their inner world is becoming more real than their outer world.
And they say it is more real than this world.
Well, that's it. And I've had that personal experience myself, and it was more real than this. It's kind of like waking up into a dream. It's very bizarre. And as their senses are kind of heightened and everything is more lucid and more enriched, that experience is real to them. And that's the moment when consciousness starts to leave very profound footprints biologically, as you say. And, they're seeing this over and over again. And they're also, which is really interesting, correlating the person's story, as in what just happened to you, with what happened to their brain. So their subjective experience is being validated objectively. And he's saying some of the stories, they'll move you to tears. The person can't make their brain do that. It's just something that's happening to them.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating stuff. And he said, so the moment that you're no longer, a man or a woman, a body or an identity, the moment, you stop identifying with objects, places, kind of things, that's the moment then. They describe it as taking your attention off the particle, which is the matter, and then basically that's turning it firmly into a possibility. So when your brain and your nervous system captures that new stream of consciousness, that consciousness from the field is very self-organizing, and there's a kind of a very profound energy, as he's saying, and that is the moment then when someone is literally processing a quantum phenomenon in the brain. So they've made scientific neuroscientists all over the world study this work, and like you said earlier, while the person is having the experience, the neuroscientist is kind of looking and saying, oh, she's having a seizure. and they say, well, does she look like she's having a seizure? You know, very clearly the person's prostate and the heart monitor is nice and relaxed, and the person is clearly having the time of their life and an experience, you know, beyond space and time.
Yeah.
Which sounds intriguing.
I know. I mean, my intention was to go on the advanced workshop, because you've got to do the progressive then the advanced, but I knew I wasn't disciplined enough in my meditation, so I told myself I wasn't going to let myself go on that advanced workshop until I've committed myself to reading the book again. I play the audiobook all the time, and to being disciplined in the meditations each day. And it's really weird because I know it works. I absolutely know it works without a doubt, but my ego will still give me an excuse and a reason not to actually commit to the practice. Yeah,
I'm reading Ego is the Enemy at the moment, right, on holiday. So yes, it's interesting stuff, but it is definitely the enemy. You've got to keep on to it at all times, yes.
It's like we're not happy with what we've got. We know we want the things that the meditation is going to create, but we'll do everything instead of doing the meditation. It's crazy, isn't it?
Such is the human condition, eh?
Absolutely. Well, we've been conditioned to do that, haven't we? So, Right, we've come up to the hour mark. Awesome. So what I'll do is maybe we just have a short break. Okay. I just like to sort of feed my pets at this point.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
And then we'll come back in a few moments and just carry on talking about the deprivation centre and anything else you want to discuss, James.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
All right.
Awesome.
All right. Cheers, Jimmy. See you in a few minutes. Cheers.
Awesome. Thank you.
If we were to change the world, we would have to change the media. The sordid state of affairs on our planet is largely due to a misguided, misinformed, and deliberately miseducated mass populace. Public opinion and mindset is largely controlled by the mainstream media. To a large extent, this has been the purpose of the mainstream media from a historical context. Much the same can be said for our imposed educational systems, as both have been developed with the specific intention of manipulating the public into believing and supporting a system of enslavement. It is important to recognize that education and media are inextricably linked. In order to truly affect a massive number of people into moving into a creative and constructive pattern of behavior, we need to change the purpose and effect of media as we know it. Our minds have been enslaved by the mind-numbing repetitive mass media programming that has been put out for consumption by a largely controlled mainstream media global network. Only 4 corporations own all major news networks and the best-selling papers and magazines, and these 4 companies just happen to be owned by a few at the very top, who are all in turn controlled by the CIA on behalf of the Vatican. Much like the educational institutions, we put unquestionable faith in the media and the versions of reality it portrays. Due to the fact that people put unquestionable faith in the media, it has massive influence over people and can affect them in many ways. The effects of media largely influence the way in which we view and interact with the world. There are several recognizable tactics used to do this, such as priming. In some cases, media messages may cause us to recall old ideas, knowledge, or experience. For example, a news story about the French presidential elections may trigger thoughts about the French economy, or remind one of a past trip to Paris, or to pick up some French brie when doing your grocery shopping. Agenda setting, also known as gatekeeping, refers to the fact that the media controls the information we get and therefore what we think. Editors have a lot of power here because they are ultimately the ones who decide what we are thinking about. Then there is framing, which refers to the particular treatment, angle, or spin applied to a message, which often ends up shaping our opinions about current affairs and who the good guys are in any situation. Agenda setting is deciding which story to tell, and framing is deciding how to tell them. Most media messages like adverts and public information campaigns, including news bulletins, are designed to change our attitudes and behavior. Factors that increase the likelihood of success include likability, credibility, or attractiveness of a source, the arguments used, and the people who seem to agree with them. Media also plays a role in persuading people to adopt new ideas or practices. Often, they first communicate the message about the new idea, which then spreads over interpersonal networks, expanding over time to include social leaders, peers, and the community. This eventually leads to the adoption of the idea innovation, reaching a critical mass. In today's world, it is impossible to escape media influence, so what we need to do is to change it, and in so doing, we will change the world.
Okay, welcome back. Hope you've had a nice short break. And so really, just second half, take it wherever you want to take it, Jimmy, really. I know you wanted to talk about syncretism. Do you want to give us some views on
Yeah,
that?
thanks, Joe. Yeah, so I was mentioning to you about that I've been getting into kind of the works of Sethicus Boza on Black Earth Productions, and kind of a lot of his work really resonates with me. And kind of one of my many interests that kind of resonates with Sethicus, and one of his interviewees was Michael Denny, calls himself the Thunder Wizard.
Okay, not
He's a
heard of
bit
that one.
awesome. Yeah, you can check him out
Right.
online. He's pretty cool. And yeah, one of my kind of many interests which resonates with Sethicus and Michael lies in the practices and traditions that kind of have a connection to prehistory. And when I say prehistory, I don't mean like a few thousand years ago. I mean, right back to the first humans.
Yep.
Kind of, when we talk about like your energy and the gods and spirituality and all this kind of stuff, this stuff's real. It's a science which it isn't up for like arbitrary interpretation, as you say. It's the terrain, and it can be mapped and it can be explored and it can be verified, and these follow practical observable rules that you can see. So kind of what I'm getting at, without kind of going into too much detail, is like all of our previously isolated societies around the world, kind of from your Australian Aborigines to your Amazonian tribes to the Siberians, etc. They all have their shared stories, their shared myths, their shared ancestral heritage. Whilst they weren't connected, how is it that they have all these striking similarities across the board?
Yep.
So like in another context then, it's like when you have 4 different people who don't know each other and they're all tapping into the same thing and reporting the same experiences. So for example, I follow DMT UK out of interest, and there are lots of people there exploring spirituality and consciousness in a safe, productive, constructive way. These are not people taking drugs and getting high, and these are people who are exploring their consciousness in a way that they should be allowed to explore within their own sovereignty within their own homes. Anyway, what I'm getting at is like in another context, when you have like 4 different people who don't know each other and they're all kind of tapping into the same thing and reporting the same experiences, this is kind of where you're getting beyond science and spirituality. You're bringing the two together. I used to think that science and spirituality were kind of mutually exclusive, but they really aren't. And it seems like over the last couple of thousand years, it seems that we've discarded all of our ancient understandings, like in the West. And so we're going to need people who've retained that connection into the past, such as the Chinese, the Vedics, etc. And, these can all trace their ancient wisdom back to the ancient wisdom councils that, they were once present on this planet before, all of this nonsense kind of unfolded. And, when we get into these kind of areas and we start syncretizing traditions and practices, old and new, this is where we can trace our line right back to the very first humans, and we can bring this traditional wisdom and modern knowledge right together, to create something new. Might it be that, all human beings share an inherent ability to connect to something within us that we all have access to?
I think so.
That's my
I believe
understanding.
so.
All men are equal, as they say, and I believe that is the case. And I've had my own out-of-body experience, which is, that's what let me know that this 5-sense reality isn't all there is, and we definitely don't die when we die, and death's just an illusion. And when you know that for 100%, fear is just replaced by kind of sheer curiosity and intrigue. And you're following Todd Akamesis. When I watched his video earlier on this year, it just blew me away. Absolutely blew me. And I'm like, this guy is talking so extensively about what he's up to. Well, why is he not on the news? What's going on here? But
exactly.
it's not for everyone. But I spoke to Todd earlier. He's in Las Vegas holidaying at the moment.
Yes.
And he does his talks and he does his astral traveling out-of-body experience kind of arena and all that kind of stuff. And imagine having 16 people in double float tanks, having Todd talking to them through the intercom system, teaching them all how to get astral. 16 people all at once. And it's the same with Skylar's doing her theta healing. I shared a video on my page the other day, and it's she's talking about the stuff that I'm only now coming to an understanding of. Some people can't even gel with the concept of a past life. I'm starting to get to grips with the concept. There's no such thing as past and present and future. It's just all going on at once. All a bit mind-boggling, but it's all fascinating stuff.
Well, that's it. It is mind-boggling. If you try and sort it with the mind, you can't do it with the mind.
Yeah, that's been the problem,
It's the consciousness of knowing. And, talking about Sky and Todd, they're just such a perfect match for each other. And they've both got so much amazing knowledge from different angles. And I could highly recommend if anybody wants to go on a workshop with both of them that they run. It's amazing. It's an amazing experience.
That's it. Yeah. And obviously they've got their setup, down in London, which is fantastic, but it would be nice to bring them out to London if we can. Swindon's not too far from London, and as I said, we're hoping to expand this out, and
Well, I was
I just
thinking,
want to go on, sorry.
I was thinking manifest Pandora Spa to get, because they're selling them. So they're actually selling the light machines. So you manifest them as part of your setup there.
Yes, that's the plan. And then, as I said, once we can show these things and get people interested, it's just going to explode. It's just going to expand out. And, and it goes beyond, you've got the interactive elements, as I mentioned earlier, people being able to watch the screens and whatnot. But when we come to the kind of Pandora style, the binaural beats and different bits and bobs, so I know...
Yeah. Or gongs. You could have some big gongs.
Exactly, yes, all that sound baths. And it's, kind of discovering all this stuff, because whilst the shamanic path, and if you wanted to kind of talk about that kind of stuff where people use the plant medicines and whatnot, but in my experience in my younger days, and I know Mark Slee will back me up on this, we went in the wrong way, and kind of used a crowbar to kind of break through the door when you could have easily just done it with a key, and whether you come back to the kind of the floating, you don't have to take psychedelic substances or drugs to have these experiences. If we can do it through breathing techniques, through flotation tanks, if I'd known all this 10 years ago, I wouldn't have had to go to jail, but never mind, it's all a learning curve, and if I hadn't gone to jail, I wouldn't be here now. So, I don't regret it, and everything happened for a reason. It's all a learning.
Yeah, and I think people are becoming more conscious. Just because you've got the label of going to jail doesn't make you a criminal. You're just a person who's trying to find yourself in this world, and that's the way the world's. It's the matrix that's criminalised people that have just been seeking answers, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's quite ironic, really, because I did 6 years for supplying MDMA, and now they're passing FDA approval, so the big pharma can sell it to people for PTSD therapy. Awesome.
No surprises there.
Yeah,
well, you see, you've not got the cash to give the politicians that set the rules to.
Wow,
that's the difference, isn't it? Yeah.
That's it. But when we take away the need for money with this kind of the progressive plans we have and the things that you've discussed, when you take the money away, they've got no power then, because we don't need them. We never needed them in the first place, but there's nothing that we need from anyone else that we can't do for ourselves, especially
Absolutely. I had a point to make before. I've just remembered it now, and I didn't get around to saying it before. So you were talking about scientific testing, and you said all well and good. Maybe that's how it should be. I wanted to come back in and say maybe it isn't how it should be, because a lot of the scientific testing is peer reviewed, and the peer reviewed papers are controlled by the people funding those reviews. And I remember I used to work in a hospice and offered EFT, just basic tapping, nothing invasive. For people with trauma, and it was a hospice where people were end of life, and there was a lady in severe stress there, and she wanted me to do EFT with her, but I wasn't allowed to use it because it hadn't been clinically trialed. So I wasn't approved to use it. So as lovely as the hospice was, and as lovely as the people were that I worked with, it made me realise that when I get involved in helping set up a centre, I didn't want it to rely on any kind of NHS funding or any funding that gave restrictions on what couldn't be used, especially when it was non-invasive and you was getting proven results right before your eyes.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because so for example, someone mentioned for example, if we were to get the full funding for the full project in a large lump sum, and then perhaps somebody would want controlling power and influence and interest, and we're like, oh no, that's completely not the angle we want to go down. And as I said, we've got a lovely little team together so far, and Mandy, amongst other things, does reflexology, and B also does reflexology, and I believe psychotherapy and some other things. Caris does bioresonance with a bioresonance machine, which is all kind of new stuff, but so there are all the different angles all coming together. There is no need for anyone else. There's no need for outside influence. And with regards to, as you say, like the scientific research, the way I foresee it being set up is if we've got our little centre where, we'll just say for argument's sake, 15 therapeutic models, and there are 15 different, therapeutic practices being carried out. And initially I thought, we'll have a weekly podcast, and discuss floating, finds of the week. And then as the ideas kind of started progressing, I thought, there's going to be 15 different healing modalities going on here. So perhaps we'll have And then you've got the vegan cafe part of it that comes into play. Oh, well, perhaps we'll have a nutrition part. And I thought, well, we'll just set up a podcast module, and it can be podcast central. And whoever comes, perhaps the kids from the school want to do a podcast. Perhaps, the mothers meeting will want to do it. So what that kind of feeds back into then nicely is where we will be monitoring and recording, well, I say recording, making a record then, if you like, of our progress and discoveries and findings.
Yeah.
And we can disseminate that throughout our network with the podcasts. And whilst we've got other float tank healing centres as well, all feeding back to us, you've just got that live network. It doesn't need to go to anywhere else for peer review. We're reviewing ourselves.
Exactly.
If you tell me something works and you phone me and say, Jim, we discovered something else this morning, whatever it is. Oh, cool, we'll try that. Anecdotal evidence is all I need from my nearest and dearest.
Exactly. And the thing is, we're not allowed to say things like curing.
No,
cancer.
I've been slapped on my wrist a few times for saying healing. Sorry.
Yeah. So what we do is we say people have these natural techniques or utilize these natural modalities, and all of a sudden they're healthy. Yeah. They're free from dis-ease. We've not cured it. They're just free from it now. And we're open to the possibility that, before they tried these techniques, they weren't free from it, and now they are. Maybe it's contributed. Yeah. And this is the thing. But what I'm finding is there's so many people now healing naturally through natural food, through knowledge of understanding of how, let food be thy medicine, and things like cannabis oil and healing emotions and all of that kind of thing. There's too many fires to be stamped out by the medical system right now, because word of mouth is winning, because fortunately so many people have had things like cancer and gone down the traditional route, the allopathic route of chemotherapy and radiotherapy, and they're actually not surviving beyond 10 years, the majority of them, whereas people who are taking natural measures are actually cancer-free for life.
There we go. And as you mentioned that, and as you said, about the too many fires to put out, because there's a little meme shared this week, I think it's 51 holistic, doctors have been off. 80, is it?
80.
That's
in America.
And that could very well put a lot of people off from wanting to be involved in something such as this. But as you say, the word of mouth element, once it's out there are far more of us than there are of them. So as you say, with this grassroots effort, get it off the ground, get these centres up and running, and once it's just distributed and disseminated, there's no stopping it. There's no stopping it anyway. It's done now. There's no stopping now. No. Exactly.
It's so obvious. I mean, I think what surprises me that more people aren't actually cottoning on to the 80 doctors, people linked to natural remedies are no longer here. Yeah. The suspicious circumstances, and it's just unbelievable that people aren't. It's not on the mainstream. It just shows you how controlled it is, that the fact that this is a mainstream story.
It does.
And so why anybody watches the mainstream news now, I don't know, because if something like that's not hitting it, then it's not legit, is it?
Exactly. And when you talk about all this kind of mainstream news and corruption and stuff that I wanted to come back to earlier with regards to a therapy, because I know you deal a lot with the SRA kind of stuff, and this is all kind of stuff that people don't generally want to talk about, and understandably, of course, but it's something. I spent quite a long time in prison, and in HMP Park there's a large sex offenders unit, and I was a Samaritan and a listener, as they called in prison, and basically you train up through the Samaritans, and when people are struggling, as sometimes relationships, etc., they can call for a listener, and you'll go out as a pair, and you'll just sit with them, you just listen, just as an open ear, just to provide them some comfort. But with the Samaritan meeting once a fortnight, it would be 6 or 8 guys from the main general population and 6 to 8 guys from the sex offenders population. And that's the only time within the whole prison population where they'd mix. But what intrigued me was they were just men, they were just people. You wouldn't pick them out of a lineup, and I'm like, oh, and things intrigue me. It always intrigued me, this whole paedophilia thing. It just didn't compute. It didn't compute. When things don't compute, they intrigue me. But anyway, when my research then later on kind of brought me to all this stuff, and it's only really in the last 6 to 8 months I've kind of properly got to the core of it, which has led me not only to discover how massively entrenched it is all the way through society, but also the massive amounts of people that we're going to have to need to help, because there are going to be so many people. And not only when you think of the likes of, you said, Jay Parker, when his programming broke down as a, forgive me, was he in his 40s or whatever, and
Yeah.
how many people in the world is that happening to? How many people are suiciding because they don't even know what's happening to them? And that's the same with shamanic awakenings. People are having shamanic awakenings. They think they're going crazy and getting sectioned off and drugged up to the eyeballs. It's disgraceful. We need to be there waiting for these people. Come on,
Yeah.
I can see what's happening.
Yeah, a lot of people do reach the age of late 40s, 50s, but that's typically an age range where people, what is termed a midlife crisis.
Yeah.
But I like how Joe Dispenza calls that. He says it's actually a midlife opportunity rather than a midlife crisis, because what's actually happening is that your body or your soul, your consciousness is coming through saying, I'm not in alignment.
Yes.
And we start to look to gain alignment. And because the way our society is engineered, they start to get a new haircut, a new woman on their arm, a new car, a new job, join a new golf club. So effectively, they know something doesn't fit.
Yeah.
And it's actually an opportunity to align yourself with your true self.
Yes.
And I think something around that age kicks in consciously, because a lot of people who've gone through SRA and mind control the programming does start to break down in the late 40s, early 50s. And an awful lot of people at that age start to have memories of horrific things.
Yeah.
That were programmed in the years 0 to 7 is the hypnagogic state, as Jay Parker talks about, where a lot of the program's done. They'd like to get the children before the age of 7. Yeah. But once they've got them before the age of 7, then they continue with the mind control stuff beyond that. And some of it is unimaginable, and it would be really interesting. You talk about the prisoners and the sex offenders. How many of them are actually victims of the very thing?
Yeah, as I said, it's not something you can generally discuss because not many people want to talk about it, but it's something that intrigues me, and I've discussed it with my partner with regards to not only that, but also floatation as a therapy for the people for which these standard kind of therapeutic models just have no impact whatsoever. There are some people, and we're all just products of our environment. Some people are willing to accept, as you said, when you're having flashback memories of things that Jay Parker discusses, that's just inconceivable, but this is things that happened, and there are people who, they're products of their environment. People do what's done to them, and, they don't know any better. And then when they do actually have that therapy and have that realization, all this kind of stuff, there are different levels to it, as we know, but it's stuff that one is exploring.
And I would say, I'm not the most experienced on SRA. There's a lady called Sandra Effect who is, greatly more experienced, 20 odd years of working with SRA survivors, and she's developed some amazing technique that gets through to it. But I have attended 4 of the workshops that Sandra's run, and I've met the survivors. And when you actually hear the survivors' stories, and sorry, the dogs just came comfortable, and you actually understand what they've done to the senses of these people, of these children. So I'll give you an example of a lady called Fran. Fran Toes is a lovely, lovely lady, again in her 50s, discovered that she was a survivor of SRA, satanic ritual, through her family, attended these rituals. And one of the things that she actually described was an event that they do, I think it was at 7 years old. They get a child and they put the child they get a pregnant cow, they cut open the pregnant cow, they take its fetus out, and they torture the fetus in front of the cow, and they put the child inside the cow and stitch the cow up. So the child at 7 years old is inside this cow that's seeing its own fetus being tortured. So this cow is in extreme trauma, and the child is surrounded completely and utterly by the energy of the being that they're actually stitched up inside. So this is some of the extremes of what these stories shared. It's like unimaginable, some of the stuff.
I never heard that, but yes, yeah.
So if you understand energy and you understand experience, and then you realise that the people who do these kind of rituals, they do it for a reason. Some of the reasons are actually to deprive the person of any hope or belief, but also to surround them with energy. So they create these programs to cope with the energy. Sorry, Ruby, come here. Sorry, the dog's getting the cat. So it's like there's so much to undo.
Mm-mm.
So I would say they'd actually use sensory deprivation tanks as part of the torture.
All right.
So we would have to muscle test, because kinesiology tells you, the body never lies, if it's safe to do the actual sensory deprivation for people who've gone through SRA.
Contraindication then?
Yeah, because it could be that you would trigger the person if you put them in a tank.
See, this is all interesting stuff, but,
But I would suggest the way to develop the best programs would be to work with people like Sandra, who's developed techniques to muscle test, to ask the body, is it safe to do this? Will this help? And so the body will tell you if it's okay to do it or not. So I think kinesiology and muscle testing for highly traumatized, deep-rooted trauma would be a good thing to incorporate into your centres.
Oh, that's interesting, for sure.
So sorry, I just wanted to throw that in because
thank you very much.
Made me think about it.
No, these are things that I'm interested in. Just as I said, I research everything, and these are the people that we want to help as well. And it's just so widespread. I don't think I don't think a lot of people realize how much. And as I said, this kind of feeds back then into the whole. Forgive me, the whole donation basis. A lot of these people, they have no means. Who can afford to pay? I think Abigail Patman talked about, 50 grand spent on, therapy and healing. It's a lot of money, and there are a lot of people out there who are suffering unnecessarily, Oh, I think you've gone.
Yeah, I'm just stopping the dog getting the cat, so excuse me. Come up here, Ruby.
Right.
Come on. I'll just get her. So if you could carry on talking and I'll just get the cat and dog.
Yes, no problem. No worries.
So
where was I? I was talking about, it was the SRA, wasn't it, and the group healing. Well, as I said, that kind of factors into a multitude of different things. So we've gone kind of down a bit of a dark path here, but to bring it kind of back then, one of my ideas, for example, was to include the schools and the colleges in the area. It would be kind of offer, say, 2 free floats a month to each school, and they can use one for whatever they want. For whatever they want. And then for the other one, perhaps we send a question, a monthly question that goes out every month. But for the winners, it's kind of to promote creativity as well. So if you've got a class, art and design class, for example, in a college, how fantastic to get the whole class down, get them, floating of a morning for an extended 2 or 3 hour float. Not only that, a guided 2 or 3 hour float to really get them into that theta state, and then get them on. Yeah, do you know what I mean? That just apply, you just take that model I've just described there and apply it to, all sorts of different things. Football teams and.
It'd be good to test that at exam time for students as well. Get a group that haven't had that done, a group that have. And get the relaxation, remove the stress.
Yes.
And let's see how it improves their exam results.
Yes, that's another good shout. Like I said, there's just arms and legs growing out of the arms and legs with this one. So we can just include anyone and everyone. So that's where it's kind of coming to now, is just getting this awareness out there, connecting with as many people as you said, and like you said, your friend there who deals with the SRA stuff, and these are the kind of people I think what I want to do is get the awareness out there, because there'll be people like yourself who go, oh, hello, and they can see, because as Mandy describes it, what we want to do with regards to the float center and the Coombs element is we want to make it so that everyone gets something out of it. Everyone can see how they can contribute to it and how they can, benefit from it at the same time. And when we make it really inclusive then with the vegan cafe and the viewing studios and the therapeutic modules, etc., we kind of want to give the community its soul back then, if you like, and get that meeting place where people can just come and hang out. And how beautiful would it be to get to a point? So if you imagine a donations-based cafe, for example, where it's free for anyone who needs it, the first thought would be, people would just come and, they'll take the piss.
It works. I know someone who does it.
It won't happen like that. It'll be all organic and it'll grow fine, because people don't want to take the piss. Everyone people just want what they need. That's what I seem to be discovering now. People just want there's nothing beyond that. What do you need beyond that?
Exactly. Once we lose materialism, because we talk about midlife crisis, we realise that nothing outside of us fulfills us. And actually, the most selfish thing we can do is give service to others, because we release such amazing chemicals inside our own physical being when we offer that kind of compassion and love, we feel great. And it's the best fix we can ever get from our own chemicals in our own physical being. And, one of the concepts I've got is food growing projects. So you get local communities to come in and grow food, and you use the food in the vegan cafe.
Beautiful.
And people who can't afford it can take some of the food for their own use, but also and then you use it for medicinal purposes. So you make your own face creams and organic natural products. Again, it all goes back into the centre to keep the centre sustainable.
That's it.
And you're using everything natural.
That's it. That's what it's all about, and that's what we're striving towards. And it all, for me personally, it all kind of started when I moved to Swindon last year before I went back to Wales, and I just by chance stumbled into a lady called Kathy Ratcliffe. She authored a book called Quantumologist, and she'd started the Swindon Mind Body Spirit group, which goes on every Tuesday night, and just a nice bunch of like-minded people, and it kind of grew from there, and all these ideas and kind of everything just comes together, and it's kind of grown from that really. And we've got a little Thursday night group as well, the Rabbit Hole, which kind of gets into more kind of discerning matters, the nitty gritty we were talking about just now, the SRA and whatnot. But how nice is it going to be for us to be able to kind of have those weekly meetings as well at the centre, and others will branch off from it, and where we have all these little groups and offerings that are going on here, there, and everywhere, they can all just come to the centre. And right, so you need 2 meeting rooms. Well, there's a meeting going on every night now, so right, we'll build another meeting room then next door, and just have a centre, have everyone together. Because
I'll share the rest of my vision with you.
Go on.
The centre would be a big house, a big white house for some reason, on acres of land. There'd be loads of eco huts where the workers could live, but also you could have the therapy rooms, you'd have your food growing projects, and my bigger vision is to have the consciousness conference that's held in London actually at the centre. So the conference would be there. So all these wonderful way showers would be there, and then they'd walk around the centre. And I feel and imagine myself saying, this centre is a result of all you way showers showing me that this is possible.
It. You're just describing my vision, Joe, essentially. You're literally just describing. So, we're on the same page here. And we're not the only ones, are we? So let's find the others and let's get a show on the road.
The New Earth is coming, isn't it? And, Eckhart Tolle talks about it in his second book, The New Earth. And we're bringing that frequency, that inspiration in spirit in through us, because that's what we probably signed up to before we actually entered into the physical realm.
I believe in that. Shakti Cabral was telling me the other day about the New Earth Grid, and, it's about the intention. And when you set your intention straight, you can transition over. So I think, for me personally, the reason why I kind of got into setting this up was, yes, exploration through floating. But, I think, we've all got a lot of our own individual healing to do. I think I certainly have. And I kind of want to kind of see what needs sorting out from this lifetime. And then perhaps you need to delve into the other ones, and then we'll just go from there. And I want to kind of, explore everything and everyone we can bring on board and just...
Yeah. So it's about healing ourselves first. We're all works in progress. And then hand-holding others. Yes. And it's now is the time as well, and I'm saying this to my own ego, for anybody else who's listening, it's like, now is the time. If not now, when? If not me, then who? And it is literally, it's time to start taking some action to make this new earth a possibility.
That's it. And what you said there about hand-holding, kind of, and this comes back to like the shamanic apprentice kind of stuff as well, where we were talking about, so there are 2 elements here. One of the parts is have you heard of the ARC? Mark Passio put together something called the ARC, A-R-K, the Awesome Repository of Knowledge.
Oh, no, I've seen some of this, but I've not heard about that.
Hell of a night. Yeah, he's a really cool guy. And basically send him a terabyte hard drive and he'll fill it up with, you can imagine it's a terabyte of... So what we were going to do, it's quite funny actually. So Stephen Walsworth, he's a mate of mine. He runs the DMT UK page, and I sent him a video to watch, an Org Tells video, and he said, I can't watch that. It's 4 hours long and I only get 5 gig on my phone. I don't have a laptop. I thought, oh my God, because he's real switched on, Stephen. I thought, that's just criminal. This guy just doesn't have unlimited access to unlimited, it's just criminal. I said, tell you what, I'm going to grab some DVDs and I'm going to burn a load of stuff on DVD for you. And that kind of idea then developed into the kind of Journey Media resources. So kind of in the centres, what I'd like to do is have the ARC available, and then we can have kind of Kindles on display, and the Kindles can be full of just PDFs on, nutrition, truth, knowledge, all the rest of it. And also people can request then PDFs to be printed off and take home, or request anything off the arc to go onto DVD, or if they want to bring a USB, they can even do that. So there's all that kind of stuff feeds off as well for the information. And then when people can come in, you can have like a tier basis, because like it's no good talking to somebody about, interdimensional archontic parasites if they don't even know what a vegan is, It's so obvious, and that's where the hand holding comes in. You kind of have a little question, they come in and it's like, right, so I had an idea of kind of the initial questionnaire. By asking the questions, we'll kind of take them to whichever tier they're at, and then they can kind of go from there. And it's the same with nutrition, Some people are going to come in and be, long-term vegetarians looking to transition to veganism. Other people are going to be, full-on meatheads but wanting to transition to veganism. So we have our, our levels of tiers then with hand-holding, and also it shows the progress, when someone can come in and go, look at me, I was eating meat 6 months ago and I've lost this much weight, like my complexion, all these other good stuff, people can show the benefits that they get from transitioning into these kind of healthier lifestyles and whatnot.
Yeah, and I think it's about communities as well, because, we talk about technology and access to this wonderful information. So, imagining not having access to all of it, but in reality, getting back together in communities and sharing this firsthand and seeing it firsthand. So it's like I some wonderful guests of mine who've been on the show, Susan and Robert Oliphant. They hold workshops in Nottingham, and people who are cancer survivors, through changing their diet and going down the natural route. Once people meet people like that, it inspires them beyond anything else, because no matter how many videos you see or how many books you read or how many stories you hear, it can't beat the absolute energetic exchange from another being saying, look at me, I'm still here.
Yes, exactly. That's it, shine the light and lead by example.
Yeah, and just share the energy, share the love. And I mean, one of my sort of imaginings is having sort of, I imagine it like where people who work there, everybody who agrees to work in the centre agrees also to go through their continual emotional development.
Yeah, we've discussed this, We've discussed all this kind of stuff,
So they would be continually working on themselves, and it'd be seen as a good thing. And where the environment is where people are praised, and it's a team effort, and where people help each other with whatever they can. And imagine sharing great news stories internally within the staff, but also from people. You're bringing in people who are survivors, or people who are now working there who came as a client, who came sick and ill, and now they're actually running a food growing project over there because it's inspired them in life and given them a sense of purpose. And that's the vision I've got, is these testimonials and these case studies will be living, breathing people who will be actually working in the centre saying, look at me now, I was like you, and I'm showing you this is possible.
That is exactly it. That's exactly it. And like, when I got out of jail and I was nominated for the Inspire Award, it was Beatrix Bound, my link for the Open University, and she kind of just played it down. It was like, oh, it's just this little thing. I was like, oh yeah, carry on. And then she kind of came back and said, oh, you won the award, you have to go make a video and stuff and go to this award ceremony. I was like, oh, but kind of, and then as it progressed, this whole it's inspirational, and I just wasn't feeling, I just didn't want to own that. I was like, oh, cringe. But in the end, especially when Ellie Pearson came and asked me to be the ambassador for the Boss Project, she's like, it is, and people do get inspired by it. And I'm thinking to myself now, how nice is it going to be to be able to go back into the prisons, not only to kind of say, look, if I can do it, anyone can do it, but at the same time, there's an opportunity there through the Coombs Project then for anyone to come straight out of prison and go straight into a job straight away. And not only that, where you have exactly, and where you have the open prisons as well, people can actually come and work at the centres whilst they're in prison as well, and kind of get these positions in place ready for release, because a lot of people, they leave families behind, they have to support people at home. And this is stuff that's just not taken into consideration.
And people don't have a belief in themselves. They've not been given a chance to actually have a fulfilling life, a life of meaning, a life of service to others, because they've always been in this fear state, completely battling, their unhealed traumas. So if you could create an environment where traumas are healed, emotional healing is offered, they're less likely to go back to addictions and to fear-based behaviours. So it's and one of the things that's really important as well is addictions. So I've had the benefit and I say a benefit, it's probably something I wouldn't have chosen to, but I ended up working with some people with addictions and serious, 20-year heroin addiction.
Yeah.
And if I'm honest, I didn't know where to start with, but I started with my belief in EFT, and that if you go in and heal trauma like guilt and shame, if you can shine a light inside a person, so that light, just a spark of light, makes them believe that they deserve the chance at life again, they'll maybe take the next steps, and then the next steps would be to go to Narcotics Anonymous. And the next steps would be to go into a proper rehab. And what I found, which was consistently prominent with people who heal from severe addictions, is a belief in a source greater than themselves. And once they get that, and that they know that that source greater than themselves loves them no matter what, that's when the healing takes place, when the addiction loses its grip, because addiction tends to be linked to isolation and unworthiness and avoidance of pain, emotional pain. And once you can clear those things out, and so I'd like to be able to facilitate a really wonderful healing centre for addicts, because it's really emotional healing that's got to take place there.
Very much so, yes. And like when you consider, do you know about iboga or ibogaine?
It sounds familiar. What does it remind me?
It's an extract of a root bark from Africa, I believe, but essentially what it can do is, what it does is it resets the energetic body, if you want to put it like that.
Okay.
So when people are, and this is just my understanding of it, but when people are ready to stop their heroin addiction, they are mentally, I've had enough of this, I want to stop, but they just don't have the wherewithal to go through that physical withdrawal, and especially when you consider like all the stuff that's mixed in now, whereas it would maybe be a 4-day withdrawal. Time's gone by now, you're talking 2 weeks. With iboga, they take the iboga, have like a very extreme 24-hour kind of experience, but like I said, it kind of resets the energetic body, and after 24 hours, they're reset. There's no withdrawals, nothing. It's illegal, unfortunately, but if you can do that with a molecule, like what we were saying earlier, if we can get the body into the same state as chemical DMT with a light, because it's all just frequencies and well, we can do the same as iboga, I believe, but this is all just exploration. And at the end of the day, those in charge are more interested in giving people on heroin, substitutes and making money that way, whereas people would rather be clean off it altogether. So.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting because you were talking about it's just a frequency. So one of the things that I learned as I was working with addicts, I was looking at the time Power versus Force by Dr. David Hawkins, and it's a really, you'll like the book because I know because you're on the same wavelength. You like Joe Dispenza, you like this Power versus Force, and in there they've used kinesiology to calibrate frequencies and energies of consciousness on lots of things across the planet. So say, for example, the Christ consciousness is 1,000, so that was the highest on the scale.
Yeah.
Buddha was 1,000, Gandhi was 750. They said anything above 500 was going into the realms of consciousness, awake, consciousness. Anything below 300 was typically unconscious. So humanity in the late 1980s was predominantly under 300 in consciousness. So the majority of humans, as a collective, we were unconscious. As you start to go down this scale, they were measuring things like makers of child porn. So makers of child porn calibrated at level 15.
Right.
Very low in consciousness. Death was 0, as you'd expect.
Right. Yeah.
Viruses, bacteria was 1 or 2, something like that.
Right.
But what really fascinated me was that heroin and cocaine were, I think, about 7. I might have the number wrong. But it was actually more unconscious than a maker of child pornography. The substance, vibrationally. Okay.
That's weird, isn't it?
So when you think about it, a heroin addict is putting that almost death consciousness into their physical being.
Yeah.
So they are numbing out their conscious feelings, but they're also making this vessel available to entity attachments and low vibrational beings because it's so low what they're putting in them. And I believe that the low vibrational beings from other dimensions want to keep those addicts there because they use the people who are addicts to be able to create in this realm. Yeah.
No, that resonates with me completely and kind of fades back into what Michael Denny was saying yesterday, about when your vibration raises to a certain level, you repel the others as well. So he was talking
Yeah.
about a personal experience where he went into a situation someone else just kind of upped and left, and it was to do with the fact that they had an attachment at the time because of his personal kind of,
Yeah.
you know, consciousness level. So
couldn't stand to be around.
I get all
Yeah.
that, yeah.
Yeah.
And again, it's to do with, you know, there's a lot of this kind of healing stuff going on now, and you know, everyone just wants to heal themselves, but when it comes to the more serious stuff, like, you know, your SRA, your 20-year heritage, these are not, you know, overnight fixes, but they are things that we can help. They are things that we can help. And people who spend, I've known people who spend 30, 40 years in a daily heroin addiction. That's some going, you know, that's going to take some breaking, but when they're ready for it, and a lot of them are, that's, you know, the facilities need to be there. Not, oh, come over here and we'll give you a substitute and you can just, no, you need to break out. And as you said, if that substitute is putting in a analog of the same frequency of consciousness, then it's just defeating the object, isn't it, really?
Absolutely. And it's about healing the avoidance of the emotions in the first place. So there is the physical addiction. So the body does get physically addicted to those chemicals. So that is part of it. But it's the cause of it is typically unhealed emotions, lack of self-love, guilt and shame. They're very low frequencies. And if we could, you know, for me, the centre's so big in my mind. I'm like you, I don't think small.
Mine's huge.
Yeah. But
Colin keeps calling it a mini city, so that's what Colin's got in his mind, mini city, and I've got that. I love it.
So I'm happy to share my vision because if they're everywhere, that's great.
So
you know,
yeah.
And it's for me. There would be one with Alzheimer's specialisation. So you'd have an old folks' home, and you'd have natural remedies and natural ways of researching how you're going to get those metals out of the brains, how you're going to give natural foods and techniques that are going to actually heal that. Nurseries, and in the nurseries, you know, children with autism. So you'd be looking at how you could specialise in natural.
And we've got studies as well for kids with autism. I found those yesterday where they've been doing studies of floating in autism. Beautiful.
Educational facilities on truth about vaccines and all that kind of thing. So there'd be those elements to it. An animal sanctuary.
Yeah, Colin's all over the animal sanctuary. It's beautiful.
So they would all be integrated as well because you know, people would go and visit the animals and help out to get healing and connection.
Exactly.
And so it's like you say, it's a mini city.
That's what it is.
It's a community, but it isn't about one person. The way the actual centre would be set up would be you set the intention. And what's the intention of the centre? And that is the governing rules. It's not people. The intention are how you guide the running of the centre. So, you know, the intention is to help people with disabilities, make it affordable, heal all, you know, healing for everybody, all those kind of things. And if one person comes in with a different vision, does it steer that intention away? And that's going to be a collective vote. So the intention is what drives the organisation, not any person.
Yes. That makes complete sense. That's the vibes we've been going down, because, you know, it is long term. And as I said, in the short term, yes, it's a business model. Of course it is. Like I said, when you're talking about your vision there, we've discussed all this beautiful stuff. And as I said, initially I foresee our 8-tank centre, but then as we get fully booked up, that's going to branch off then into, you know, we might even have a little centre just for your intrepid explorers because of the, you know, the nature of the 24-hour floating where people can do, you know, 3, 6, 9 or 12-hour floats overnight. And as you said, you can have your pro bono centre. I dare say we'll have a pregnancy centre because once we get so many people aware of it, like, you know, how beautiful will it be when we've got, you know, Corey and Sophia in the module singing to 40 women who are all or even with their husbands at the same time, where they're all, you imagine you've got 20 couples in one time,
beautiful for the baby in the womb as well.
Exactly, and not only are they floating, but they can do their prenatal classes all at the same time. It's just, it's a mini city that everything fits into.
Yeah, they get the energy of the relaxed mum because the baby feels everything that the mother feels. They share the same DNA. It's like, it's just amazing.
And just to add, go on, sorry, you go first.
It's just one of my friends, a couple of my friends, one does yoga for pregnant ladies, another one does aromatherapy for pregnant ladies. So, you know, you could have a themed natural pregnancy centre for support through pregnancy. Yeah.
Well, it feeds quite nicely actually because Caroline does energy work, but she is very interested in the birthing And
Yeah.
there was an awesome video of there's two ladies who, they were running a birthing center over in America, and then they discovered floating, and now they incorporate the two.
Right.
So Caroline is very interested in kind of heading up the kind of the pregnancy floating arena of it.
Mm-hmm.
And her husband Paul, this is quite a bit of a niche one, but Paul is a Buddhist priest, and he's the UK's only qualified Buddhist exorcist.
Okay.
And again, when it comes to synchronicity, so I had the idea for pyramids in the tanks for obvious reasons that we know the different bits and bobs, and also for the food and stuff. Well, Paul does lots of, well, not lots, he does clearings in people's houses, energetic clearings and all that kind of stuff. And he's been saying that the houses are getting bigger and bigger, you know, as we know what kind of goes on in these houses, etc., etc. Anyway, what he had was a message, a vision to come and see me with regards to the crystals and the pyramids. He said, "Have you thought about this?" I said, "I have actually, yeah." And then we kind of got, so what we've agreed is Paul is going to be our resident spiritual groundskeeper, because not only do we have the tanks. Now, this is something I had considered, but not to this level. So when you think about the cleaning of the water, for example, now generally they use chlorine, but Finland and Germany lead in the way using UV and hydrogen peroxide, which is awesome. But then in the rabbit hole discussion last week, Karis raised the very pertinent issue of the energy of the water. Water holds the consciousness energy. So for example, I was talking about an anecdotal tale where a young lady was in a tank, and she had a repressed memory that came up of when she was raped as a 19-year-old that walked home, and she lost 2 years of her life, had no memory. And so the point being, there's that energy in the water. Now what Paul is saying is that we, metaphorically speaking, is that we release that space out. Every time someone goes into the tank, we create that space and we release that space to them, you know, energetically and spiritually. So it's going to be fantastic that we're going to have Paul there, not only to kind of keep the place energetically clean, the water clean.
Very valid point.
The modules, you know, if you're having these therapeutic modules where people are going into real dark memories and spaces, that's going to accumulate, surely. So it's nice that we're going to have him there, and that space then is going to be...
It's going to be crucial.
Constantly. Yeah, and it's just...
crystals as well.
The universe serves up that, you know, the universe brought us together for that because it's an essential element. And
it makes so. There's a place I'd highly recommend that you go and see. And it's a place that they make Aurosoma. Yeah, so it's basically coloured bottles. In fact, I've got some of the stuff here. So this is one of the sprays that I use. This is a Christ consciousness spray, and then there's pomanders, but they also have these bottles that are coloured. Now, I was privileged to go on a retreat there, and I had a walk round the centre and also the laboratories and the farm.
Nice.
And so in the laboratories, they actually have this purely cleansed water. They run it over this special stone from India. I forgot the name of the stone now. And they actually purify all their own water. They actually have this machine that turns all the things in a figure of 8 for 8 minutes. Yeah, so everything's sacred.
Yeah.
Every plant is blessed. The energy, they actually crush crystals and put crystals into the fluids. But the crystals have to be actually taken out of the ground in a loving way, because crystals hold the energy.
Yeah.
And if you actually go on the training centre, in the room, they've got these crystals that are this big, all these different crystal balls everywhere, all different shapes. And the actual farm, they've got the chakra path, which I know there's some debates about whether chakras, what they do and stuff, but it's an amazing place. They actually bury crystals underneath all of the trees that they grow.
Ah, see, this is awesome.
The actual place is on the main heart line that runs through the UK. So it's in Lincoln, and I have never been in a place in my life where I felt the vortex energy like I did there.
Boom.
There was high vibrational beings there that were saying thank you and putting energy on my neck. There was darker beings trying to put thoughts into my head too.
Yeah.
It was. I sat down in the chair and I heard this whoosh past my right ear, and then I got a high buzz in both my ears, like a really high pitched buzz. And the place was absolutely a vortex that beings could come through.
Awesome.
Highly recommend you go there, because what the concepts that they've incorporated in the farming, it's biodynamic farming. And the products that they make fit with a lot of the stuff you want to do. They do day visits, so I would suggest that you go and have a look with your colleagues.
That's awesome, because that's brought two things to mind, which is two dear friends of ours, Roger and Tracy. They have a very unique way they treat their water with the crystals and all the rest of it. And they, that's one of their offerings to the Coombs. Tracy's, water for the group, because it's very special. He said, and the taste is phenomenal. And then you come back to the energetic. What did that make me think of? Oh, you made me forget now.
Just realised the time. We're actually 2 minutes away from the end of the show.
So we've come to a close. But yes, you give me some food for thought then, especially with it being on the heart chakra line, because as I said, that's right, it was the other farm that I just mentioned to you earlier is also on the heart chakra line, and it has his own well.
Yeah,
his own
same
well. So,
same,
it's all fits in.
There. They get all the water from the land from there.
Yes. Beautiful.
And the actual energy centre makes a massive difference on the place selected.
I believe so. I do, yeah. So that's the lines we're going to explore. Yeah,
that's why the churches and all the government buildings are on the ley lines, on the vortexes.
The bath spot that we mentioned, Jess's spot, there's a font there which goes back to the Normans, the Romans, and even beyond to the ancient mystery schools. So, they knew what they were doing back then. So we have to rediscover all that and continue the work.
Absolutely. I think we'd love to get you back on, and if you can start, obviously I know it's early days, as in you want to do the crowdfunding, it's being put out there in the ether right now. Anything I can do to help make your vision a reality, because it inspires me to, get a centre. It might be that we all end up getting a centre together.
Let's hope.
We have several all over the country. Who knows?
But if anyone else is of the same persuasion as us, Joe, please get involved. Please get in touch, rather, because, this is what we want to do. We want to get the energies together, and the more energy that comes together, the quicker we'll make this happen. Yeah.
And any people who want to be a philanthropist, I can never say that word, and wants to donate or wants to get this good cause, I'm pretty sure if you've watched this show, there's this really well-meaning intention here. It isn't about us, it's about healing humanity. So if anybody wants to contribute financially, business support, we would all be very welcome. And, we're looking for people to invest jointly in a large building. That's the project we're currently looking at, is multiple investors that can live on the grounds and create the centre and make revenue from actually working it from the grounds. So
awesome. Sounds good.
Fabulous. It's been lovely having you on,
Thank you very much,
Jimmy.
Joe. Absolute pleasure.
All right.
Speak to you soon.
Thanks ever so much. Take care.
Take care, lovely. Thanks very much.
Night.
Ciao, lovely.
If we want to change the world, we must first change the media. Mainstream media exists for the purposes of indoctrination and manipulation of public perception. The world of free and independent media is growing, and with the upsurge in information now available in the public domain, it has never been easier to access free and independent media. The exploration of this information resulted in an experimental project which would provide a fully supported space for researchers, whistleblowers, and seekers of all kinds to express themselves and educate the world. On the 1st of January 2015, Conscious Consumer Network was launched to the world. Nobody thought we would make it this far, but CCN is the longest running free and independent media network of its kind. CCN is a unique collaboration of hearts and souls, bringing you information from different perspectives to educate and inform. Since we started CCN, we have had only one desire: the pursuit of a free, fair, just, sustainable world. And this has not changed. Having overcome many challenges over the last 2 years, CCN is here to stay, and we've got great things lined up for 2017. Help keep CCN on the air by supporting the 2017 Network Support Fund.